And next I have Jeff Trimbath. He has nearly 3 decades of experience in conservative public policy, faith leadership and development at both the state and federal level. He has served several DC-based conservative organizations and served over 6 years in the administration of President George W. Bush. He believes strongly in values of faith, family, and freedom as the bedrock of our nation, and he desires to see those values permeating every corner of our society. Thank you. Jeff.
Jeff Trimbath, Maryland Family Institute, a brand new organization. Our vision is a Maryland where God is honored, life is cherished, families flourish, and religious liberty thrives. Now, you might say that's a crazy mission for a place like Maryland, right? And I would not necessarily disagree with you. That's why we have a very tightly sort of formulated mission statement, and that is engaging and equipping God's people to advance faith, family, and freedom in Maryland's capital, church, and culture. We may not be able to affect all of what goes on statewide here, but we can certainly educate and inform God's people about what's going on and then engage them so that they can become active in these issues. That's our mission at Maryland Family Institute. You've walked into a room that features a Catholic priest, a Baptist deacon, a Presbyterian elder, and 2 Muslim scholars. Sounds like a joke, right? It sounds like the beginning of a joke, but I can tell you the subject is not anything to laugh about. We all agree that kids need mommies and daddies who are married to each other, present in their lives, and that the state and all the other institutions of our society need to support that basic family unit. And unfortunately, all too often over the last several years, the state has undermined that basic human relationship. And so I just want to, I've been asked to talk about how some of the actions in Annapolis have affected the family unit. I'm so delighted to see Representative Arakan and Representative Schlega, our great friends here. Support them, pray for them, would you? They are standing on the front lines for the family in Annapolis. I can tell you that from personal experience. They are right there in the fight every day, especially from the middle of January to the beginning of April. We see a lot of each other, and so just delighted that you're here. Ambassador Sauerbrey, thank you for being here. You've been a huge fan of ours at Maryland Family Institute. So grateful for your leadership. Thank you for being here. So I've been asked to talk about some of the threats to parental rights and then what you can do about that. I will cut to the chase immediately with regard to what you can do. On each of your chairs is a sign-up card. We want to keep you informed about what is going on in Annapolis, and if you fill this out and put it in the box at the back at our table with my colleagues Lila or Leanne, we will keep you informed about what's going on in Annapolis so that you can engage on those issues. With regard to the last session, I'm going to tell you the bad, the ugly, but also the good, okay? The bad, the ugly, and also the good. Perhaps the most egregious attack on family values came with the passage of HB 522, which was sponsored by Delegate Jones of Anne Arundel County. This is the bill that expands the services that are available to students in Maryland public schools from mental health to now full telehealth services without parental permission or notification. Now, in the bill, it does talk about parental rights, but there's a giant loophole in that bill that says that the school does not have to pay attention to those rights in cases of emergencies. Well, guess who defines what an emergency is? Guess what those conversations are like? We don't know because we're not told. Each public school in Maryland is now forced, because of this bill, to devote a space in the school and to contract with health services for students as young as 12 years old without parental notification or approval. That's the bad. The ugly, I would say, came with the so-called Freedom to Read Act, HB 785, which was the centerpiece legislation of Delegate Jones, the Speaker of the House of Delegates. This was her the centerpiece of what she called her decency agenda. That was literally the term that she used. And what does this bill do, HB 785? Well, it's kind of a contorted sort of 30-page bill, 2 sections to it. The first 3 pages have to do with public school libraries. And now in public school libraries, you're not allowed to discriminate in terms of authorship of books, any authors in terms of their politics, their religion, or their origin. So all of those are allowed now in public school libraries. There is a process whereby local public schools can consider age appropriateness with regard to those materials, which was a concession that they gave at the end. But that's the first part of the bill. The second part of the bill has to do with publicly funded libraries, community libraries in the state. I don't know, for those of you who are parents, I know when my 3 kids were born, we loved to go to the Crofton, Maryland Library. We went there every week. Well, now, publicly funded local libraries, thanks to the Freedom to Read Act, can impose no standard on who gets what materials at all. So all materials are made available to all comers. What that means is that your 7-year-old can have full access to the porn and the smut that is currently in the library. And I see Representative Arikan nodding her head at this because she had the courage to read some of the excerpts of this material on the floor of the House of Delegates. She was roundly chastised by her colleagues because they were embarrassed by the material of this stuff. And everyone in this room would be embarrassed too. This is not classics of American literature. That's what they want you to think it is. It's not that. It is porn and smut for kids. It's illegal in a commercial setting in Maryland. Businesses are not allowed to make this stuff available to young people. Our view is that if it's illegal in a commercial setting, it ought to certainly be illegal in an educational setting here in Maryland. And this all in the name of decency. Literally in the Maryland Code, section 11201, it defines what indecency is. That's what the statute says. It's the very opposite of what this bill does. I'm so glad the previous speaker quoted from Isaiah 5, those who call good evil and evil good. This, if you're a pastor or a priest and you're preaching on that sermon, you now have your new sermon illustration for what that means today. It's the Freedom to Read Act under the speaker's decency agenda. That's what that is. So that's the bad and the ugly, but let me tell you some of the good. And that's HB 558. This was the bill that Delegate Atterbury from Howard County, the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, very nice lady, we've testified before her many times at the Maryland Family Institute. This is the bill that would finally remove parental opt-out from sexual orientation and gender identity material for all Maryland public school families. Take it out. You no longer can opt your kid out of those subjects in all Maryland schools. That's what this bill would have done. It passed the House. It made it over to the Senate. Thankfully, because of some behind-the-scenes work, it never made it out of committee. But that's great. But I can guarantee you, and I'm sure my colleagues from Annapolis will affirm me in this, it will be back. It will be back. And so we need all of you to be aware of that. We will keep you aware of that once it's introduced and you'll be engaged on that issue. It absolutely will be back. So that's the current state of the affairs with regard. There's lots more that we can talk about and other bills that I can tell you about, but that's sort of a summary. Where do we head from here? I want to talk about the biggest threat to parental rights between now and the end of the year, and that is the so-called reproductive freedom abortion amendment on the ballot this November. Now, I recognize in a room like this, with lots of different perspectives, that we have different views on the subject of abortion. And I'm not going to wade into that subject tonight. I have a very strongly held view. Many of you have very strongly held views, ranging from no abortions at all, because this is God's child, to abortion up to the ninth month. I'm sure those views are all represented here, and I'm not going to get into it. You have your views, and I respect your views. This amendment is not about abortion. It is not about abortion. It is about parental rights. And how do I know that? I know that from two parts of the legislation that authorized this to be on the ballot in the fall. In the legislation, it talks about no person's right to reproductive freedom shall be infringed. It does not define that word person at all. There's no constraint on that. So a person means any person, regardless of the age of that person. And that person's sense of reproductive health shall not be infringed. That includes that person's sense of their own gender. So what this means practically for the parents in the room is that if your 10-year-old is struggling with gender dysphoria, and this is a real thing, you as a parent cannot get in the way of what they think they are. And if you are, you'll be in violation of the Maryland State Constitution if this is passed. It does not have to do with abortion. It has to do with your rights as a parent, and it is a brazen, direct attack on those rights. And that's why, regardless of your view of abortion, and I respect all the views that are represented here, you need to be a no on this amendment. Now, if you want more information about this, my good friend Deborah Brancato. Deborah, where are you? In the back here. Deborah, right back here with the Health Not Harm Coalition. They have a table in the hallway. Please stop by, talk with Deborah. She can give you all the details. You can sign up and be an active no on this amendment. So let me just finish with a few thoughts about what we can do to get engaged in this fight. The most important thing that all of us can do is to have good relationships with our spouses and with our kids. Amidst the craziness, these crazy ideas that Darren talked about and that we're talking about tonight, the best pill that you can give to your kid to resist this virus that is ripping through the schools is your relationship with them. And so how is your relationship with your kids? Are you on speaking terms? Do they like hanging out with you as much as teenagers can? I realize that. Okay, it's a big ask. But you're going to be the one who will guide them through this crazy time. And so I would just encourage all of you to reprioritize relationships that you have with your family. That's the most important thing you can do. Your presence here, getting involved, showing up is a huge endorsement. Talking to elected leaders at all levels of government about this. And the question you should ask is one simple question, and that is, do you believe that parents are the primary authority for their children's lives? That's the question. And if it's not a quick yes right away, that's not your candidate. Period. End of story. You can run for office, right? Maybe you've thought about that to get that view across. Write letters to the editor. You know, Armstrong Williams had a wonderful column on transgenderism about 3 weeks ago in the Baltimore Sun. It's a new day at the Baltimore Sun, by the way. It's readable again. He had a wonderful column on transgenderism. I sent him a little note because we've had some correspondence back before. I just thanked him for this wonderful column. They ended up printing my little private email to Armstrong Williams in the paper. Mine was the only positive letter written in the paper praising him for his view on this subject. So our letters make a difference, friends. Get involved in that. And then finally, show up. Show up. Do what other parents have done effectively to engage these issues.